Hello, my name is Roman Gingiashvili, and this is DVD number 100. We already issued 99 DVDs. Finally, we're proud to bring you Centennial issue of this DVD. On this DVD, I gave myself a liberty to introduce you several aspects of the game. So I'm going to bring some games. I'm going to bring you some games played with the openings I am really standing for, and sample games on that of mine and others' games. So I will bring you some opening analysis on a few different openings that I really try to endorse. And those analyses are the analyses that never been published, that's never been analyzed, and you couldn't see it anywhere else, as well as some tactics. I will bring you some instructional tactics, and also super interesting and absolutely mind-blowing end games. So it's going to be kind of variety issue, something that we have never done before. So they're going to go in a random scattered order. It's like a freelance DVD that you can watch various different things. It's not like, oh, this purpose of this DVD and this opening, and you should learn this and this opening. No. It's about various different openings, various different games, end games, middle games, and so you should enjoy it, and you should be able to find their number of very instructive and useful things. So let's start with a couple of games played by the very, very young chess player, 12-year-old, who is right now, he is a master. He has master rating, and I taught him a couple of openings, including this next two that we're going to be looking at. And I found these games very instructive, and you will see how easy to play those games once you know the basic ideas. So, first game was played against very, very strong international master, Raymond Kaufman, my good friend Larry Kaufman's son, and game was played with Scotch Gambit. E45, knight f3, knight c6. So I showed him this opening, and he studied, and finally he played, and you will see he practically got winning position right after the opening. E5, d5, everything according to the book. Bishop b5, knight e4, knight takes d4, bishop d7, bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6, castle, bishop c5. So far they're all the most popular and probably the best moves. f3, knight g5, f4, knight e4, and bishop e3. Black castled, white played knight d2, and black played f5. Now, this seems like a very strong move. f5, supporting the knight on e4. And if white takes, that's what happened in the game. F takes e. Black seemingly has very strong pawn presence on the queen side. So queen d2, but in reality this position is already very, very difficult for black. So after Queen e7, Knight b3, Bishop b6, Queen c3. And this is the move that clearly outlines White's advantage. White has full blockade on c5 and d4 squares. Black's central pawns are totally paralyzed, and therefore black has absolutely no play. After Queen c3, black tried to open the position and break White's f4 and e5 chain. fg, bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, and black gets the pawn back. Well, another option black had here is to simply play queen takes g5, but it also favors very much, this position favors white. Black has weak king, white has full blockade, and good chances after rook f6 possible to organize strong attack. So what happened? After fg, as I already mentioned, bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, and queen takes e5. c3 was played. Now white's knight heading to c5, and black has extremely dangerous position. If knight c5 right away, d4, knight takes d7 is also very good for white. But c3 is the move that has to be played, and it's a good move. So a6 was played. So apparently what black wants is to activate the a rook without giving a7 pawn. Now after knight c5, bishop f5, rook f2. And on rook f7, rook f1. I think position is completely lost for black. White has f-file, black has weak king, white has dominating knight, and this is far more than they need to win the game. What happened after rook a to f1, black played a5, now they want to free the rook, so a6 pawn is not hanging. And here, white played very interesting move, knight d7. Very good option also is knight d3, attacking the queen, and queen has to go to e6 to keep protecting the bishop. Then knight f4, attacking the queen again, and knight h5, playing knight f6. But as Daniel Gurevich explained it to me, he saw this option, but he liked better knight d7, which is also a very strong move. Black is forced to take this knight on d7, not with the bishop, of course, because rook is hanging. So with the threat of knight f6 check, after if queen moves, black has to take the knight. Now rook takes f5, and white has absolute winning attack. Queen g7, h4, it's a good move. Pawn has intention of moving farther and opening black's king. Rook e8, rook f6. Black is totally helpless here. Rook d6, h5, and rook from e to e6. The position is very bad. Well, h6 move was very good in this position, but Daniel played rook f5, and here black made immediately losing move. Position is lost. Rook d8 is losing at once. What they should have played, rook to e8. What's the difference between rook d8 and rook e8? I will explain it to you in a second. After rook d8, queen f4 first, and now you see that there is no way to stop rook f7. If black goes rook e7, they lose immediately after h6, queen has to move, and there is a back rank made. The difference between which rook goes to 8 rank, for example, this would have been okay, although position is still very bad, of course, because on queen f4, when they go rook d7, h6 doesn't win immediately because black has queen e7. And in a variation in the game, when rook d8 was played, queen f4, and now rook e7, h6, you see the e7 square is taken away from black's queen, and they have to resign immediately. So after queen f4, black was forced to play h6, rook f7, queen takes g5, and after rook f8, black simply resigned because this leads to immediate. Very, very interesting game. So this is again good illustration of powerful position that we got right in the opening. Now the second game I want to show you is actually played by Gurevich little differently and very differently from what we should be expecting in this game. Very differently, that means he played super interesting pawn sacrifice. e4, c5. We're playing our Grand Prix, knight c3, e6. So this is the case when black doesn't want to fianchetto. Knight f3, knight c6, g3, d5, d3, knight f6, bishop g2, bishop e7, castle, and normal move is castling for black. After which we say we're going to play e5, and then go knight e2, then probably we go h3 or maybe g4 right away, and then knight on g3, with a chance for white to organize slowly the attack. But what black did in this position, they played b5, and the idea of b5 move is to delay castling. After e5, knight d7, they may want to go f6, or maybe even castling queenside. So black played b5, e5, knight d7, and here Daniel played super interesting and super strong move that I like very much. He played here f5. Now this move needs to be analyzed carefully. Unfortunately, he didn't continue with the right play, but then when I analyzed this f5 move, I came to conclusion that it's very good move. Although when I analyzed with Ribka afterwards, Ribka didn't like it very much, but I don't agree with Ribka. And when I don't agree with Ribka and use Ribka to prove it, most of the time I'm right. So I don't agree with her, and then I use her to show me the best way to play from my side. And that's like using Ribka to refute Ribka. And it works very well most of the time. So let's see what happened after f5. Obviously taking on f5, favoring white. So knight d takes e5. And here we have position where white sacrificed central pawn for initiative. Now, is this good decision or not? We will see it in a moment. Well, white played knight takes e5, black takes back, and this is the critical position of this pawn sacrifice. Well, what I want to show you is this position. It never occurred to me that we can go f5 in this position. I always want to, that's the way I was brought to a chess wall, that I have to develop all my pieces before I start active operations in the center or on the wing. Black is developed okay, so it never occurred to me the f5 move. However, Daniel played, and it turned out a very, very good move. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and here Daniel played bishop f4 move, which is inaccurate move. The sacrifice is very good, and a little bit unexpected move, queen h5, gives white very big advantage. And why? Obviously the threat is pawn takes pawn on e6, and knight is exposed on e5. What can black do? Black has a couple of options, such as b4, or maybe even ef. Well, after b4, I'm going to show you, actually this is very instructive and fascinating, how white can get big size advantage here. After b4, f takes e, while threatening knight and pawn on f7, bishop takes e6, queen takes e5, attacking g7, black has to get their knight back, and it looks like if queen moves, black is going to take knight. If queen moves anywhere, black is going to take knight, and black has great position. And if white decides to go to h5, that doesn't change much either, because queen on h5 does not represent any threat. So, but this position in reality is very bad for black. Rook takes f6, pawn has to take on f6 in order to take the knight. Next move, queen e1, pawn takes c3, queen takes c3. White has nearly winning position, and this is very interesting. I have to explain that. White is down exchange, and they don't even have a pawn to show for it. However, position is very difficult. Very difficult because c5 pawn is very difficult to protect. Queen, well, suppose rook c8. We go bishop h6. Now black's king cannot castle. We're threatening bishop g7. We go rook e1. Black is full of weaknesses. So king stuck in the center. And I don't feel like going through all the analysis of this position, but if you want to try playing it against some engine, you will see that black's position is absolutely terrible. The other option black has is just to take on f5. Taking on f5, after taking on f5, white gets also a very strong position. Knight takes. After knight takes d5, there is a threat of knight takes bishop, followed by weakness of rook on a8, because rook is loose on a8. So after knight takes d5, rook a7, rook e1, this variation is forced and gives pretty big advantage to white. Knight g6. Now we're simply developing bishop e8. Now we have big advantage in development, and when black finally castles, which they have to do, there is very weird looking shot. So we attacked on king side and in its center, and the final shot is on the queen side. Ideal b4 move, attacking c5 pawn, which cannot be protected. Any move, b takes c. Well, except for bishop e6, maybe then we take on e7, and now queen cannot recapture, and if knight does, then it's still pretty big advantage for white. Very, very strong play for white. And that makes f5 move very good. So, but that didn't happen in a game. His intuition, Daniel's intuition, he's only 12 years old, was right. Execution was wrong. Bishop f4 was played, and what he thought, he told me after the game, after f takes e, bishop takes e6, queen h5, g6, queen f3, knight d4 was played, queen f2, castling, bishop h6, rook e8, and rook e1. He said he was aiming on this type of position, and he thought that he has more than enough compensation for a pawn, because he has opened e and f file. Right now he is threatening rook takes e6, so that forces black to play knight f5, and bishop f4 was played, b4. This position, after knight d1, rook c8, knight e3 was played, knight takes e3, bishop takes e3. White does not have sufficient compensation after bishop f8, d4, c4, bishop f4. And here black should have played simply bishop g7, one misstep, f6. f6 is understandable move. Black wants to play bishop f7. Now tables turned again. Very strong move, bishop g5, and all of a sudden, if white takes, if black takes, white will have rook takes e6. Check, and taking the rook back, and now d5 pawn is loose and king is weak. White is much better. So black didn't take the bishop on g5, but if they don't take bishop on g5, they have to play bishop g7. That's what happened in the game. And after bishop g7, white is already much better. Bishop takes f6, bishop takes, queen takes f6, and after queen takes f6, rook takes f6, black is totally lost. Bishop f7. Of course, we don't want with the white to go pawn hunting and take that pawn, because after rook e2, black is going to have strong counterplay. Rook f1, immediately put black in lost position. Bishop a6 is not good anymore. Well, that's what was played. Rook c7 is not good also because rook takes f7 followed by bishop takes d5 is easy win. And the same will be on rook e7. So black played bishop e6 but ends the game the same exact way. Bishop takes d5, rook c6, and then rook f6. Because after rook c d6, bishop takes on e6 check, rook f7 check, followed by d5, leaves black in hopeless position. His opponent resigned here. This game was played also against almost 2300 player and was very well played opening part of the game. Very good idea, and actually it helped me a great deal to develop it further with ideas like f5, which I did not anticipate when I was analyzing this continuation earlier. And now f5 is turned out to be very strong move and very, very impressive idea. So now, I want to show you a few games of my own. This game I played, it's kind of blitz game. I played against another grandmaster. And this game, it's a blitz game on ICC. So, knight c3, e6, knight f3, a6. And those who bought my DVD, you guys will know the power of the piece sacrifice I'm going to show you now. b5, g3. I had a DVD where I'm specially analyzing this continuation. Bishop b7, bishop g2, knight f6, castling, b4, chasing knight away, attacking e4 pawn, knight d5, e takes d, and e takes d. I've had this position several times, I don't know, 5, 6 times on ICC, and every time against Grandmaster. Now this was against less popular Grandmaster. I had another game played with exactly same position against very famous Grandmaster, Fabiano Caruana, and I won game very quickly, which we will see right after this game. We will see that game. In both cases, bishop c5 was played here. Rook e1 check, king f8, and knight b3. And here, game was d6, knight takes c5, d takes c, and I remember explaining it on DVD that when we go c4, this is the rare position where we sacrifice piece and we don't go after our opponent's king right away. We have number of very valuable advantages, positional, which in my opinion compensating the piece sacrifice. After c4, knight bd7, a3, and it's interesting that my opponent is playing exactly the way I was analyzing on the DVD. a3, a5, and queen a4. All those moves were played there. Knight b6, queen b5, and here he played knight f2, d7. Bishop f4, bishop a6, queen c6, and here, well, he should have played rook c8. Instead, he made a move. Well, this is blitz game, and you can't really, blame him for that, for the idea. He wants to exchange queens, which loses immediately because bishop d6 check, and very simple combination. Queen takes a8, and after knight takes rook e8, leads to a simple mate. Here is the game against Fabiano Caruana. He is considered to be super GM. He is very young, extremely talented, former New Yorker that lives right now in Italy. And this is a blitz game, but I have to tell you something. The way he played the blitz game, it's not any less than some of your opponents you would play, they would play in a tournament game. So because Grandmaster in a blitz game, at least as good as average player in a tournament game. So, well, I had a big advantage, I have to admit, because I'm playing here variation that I know very well, and I analyzed that he had to deal with it over the board. So all these moves were played. It's a transposition, different move order, but we arrive to the same sacrifice. And here he played king f8, exact same thing. Well, bishop d6 move. The best move is probably d6, but bishop d6 move, I think, blocks all black's pieces. Bishop on b7 and knight on b8. But probably Caruana had an idea of playing a5 and knight a6. So let's see what happened in the game. c4, I want to ensure the safety of my d5 pawn, which is very important pawn because it keeps all black's pieces locked in. After c4, en passant, and now black plays. Obviously, taking on d5 is not possible, and black is trying to develop knight through a6 and c5. So knight d4 move. c4 was okay also, but I was a little bit reluctant because of a4 move. So I went knight d4. Again, taking on d5 is out of question. Too many black's pieces hanging. So he played bishop c5, rook b1, bishop takes d5. But now white is playing knight d5 and queen f3. Now you see the knight is hanging on d5 and the rook is loose on a8. So this move is forced. Now black's king is in a very dangerous position. Knight f5, and it's not clear how black is intending on developing any of their pieces. So knight c6, knight takes g7. This was original threat, and now of course taking on g7 is out of question because black's getting mated next move, either queen g5 or bishop h6. So this is out of question. So after knight takes g7, rook g8 was played. Knight f5. Now bishop h6 is a threat. Actually, I could have played somewhere better probably, but I'm still very happy with my position. Rook g6, h4. I want to go h5, drive the rook away from defending position. And after knight e6, h5, and rook f6, bishop h6 check. That forces black to give up a rook, and now black has two minor pieces for a rook and completely lost position. Lost position because both of white's rook are extremely active. Don't undermine rook on b1 because can always go to b7. f7 is hanging, So white is threatening mate in 1, and knight will come back to f5. Every piece is maximally active. So black, in my opinion, is totally lost. And what happened in the game is queen e7, protecting f7, knight g4, knight goes to f6, but knight f5 was okay also. I just didn't want to let black's queen to go on f6. So knight g4, king g7, and now knight f6. The threat is queen f5 with the mating idea on h7. Black played queen d6, and now knight e4. Now queen f5 will be met by knight f8 with some chances to defense, but after knight e4 and queen e5, this is completely lost for black because of this simple rook takes e6. We're eliminating defense of a g7 square. So, and after queen f6, black got checkmated. Very strong attack by white. I don't know if attack and defense was played on highest level, but it was played on high enough level to give it a serious consideration and to evaluate it as very, very powerful play by white and very interesting piece sacrifice. Okay, let's see another game, a very instructive game, played also on the internet against some strong international master. e4, g6, d4, bishop g7, knight c3, c6, knight f3, d6. We got Pirc defense, and system I recommend on my DVDs, on my lectures, is A4. So I stand behind this system very strongly, and let's see what happened in this game. Normally black plays knight f6 and castle, but in this game what happened, my opponent played queen c7. It's another sensible move, bishop e3, knight d7. Well, we don't play h3 until knight comes to f6. So we played bishop e3, knight d7, bishop e2, b6 move. The purpose of b6 is to go a6 and b5 later. It's not recommended, however, to lose so much time in the opening part of the game. Castling, a6, queen d2, bishop b7. Now, this is a bad way to play for black. What black wants to do, they think they're going to go knight f6, castle, and they think they restrained all white pawn movements. However, this is very time-sensitive position, and what I chose here is to play e5. So I have an advantage. White does have an advantage here, but advantage is strictly dynamic. So we have some advantage in development. By playing rook e1, knight f6, rook d1, castling, it's hard to take advantage of this development. So e5, it's a temporary pawn sacrifice and very powerful. I saw similar type of sacrifices when I analyzed this opening, and I saw some games played. Not exact same position, but similar. D takes c, D takes c, knight takes e5, and rook a d1. So now that we are ahead, we are way ahead in development, we open position for the price of a pawn. Besides, there is a weakness on b6. b6 pawn is very shaky. In this position, black played rook d8, which gives away b6 pawn. But what's the good advice here? What else to play? Knight cannot be developed because the same pawn will be lost on b6, or maybe even bishop f4 with more serious consequences. And if you cannot play rook d8, maybe knight d7, trying to play knight f6 and castle quickly. But you cannot do anything quickly here for black. White is way ahead in development, and after bishop f4, for example, attacking the queen, and e5, if white plays bishop g3, black is in very, very serious trouble. First of all, something like knight h6 will not allow black to castle anyway, because knight on d7 is loose, and if white plays knight e4, black's position quickly becomes very, very critical. And I think this is something they have to worry about. So that's why my opponent was happy to give up a pawn, the extra pawn, to go to endgame. But after queen takes d8, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, white gets its pawn back, maintaining very, very serious advantage. After king c8, now we cannot really attack black's king, but we can improve our piece's position. And bishop c4, attacking f7, e6, now knight e4. Obviously bishop takes b2 is not possible because knight d6, winning immediately. And after knight e4, knight f6 was played, then knight g5, and black is here totally busted. Rook f8 loses to bishop c5, and f7 pawn is lost, and there is no other way to protect f7 square, so knight d7 was played. Knight takes f7, and after knight takes b6, knight takes e5. Now white has an extra pawn and totally winning position. After knight takes e5, knight takes a4, b3, knight c5, b4, knight e4, rook e1. It's absolutely terrible position. e6 pawn is very weak. Knight d6, bishop takes e6, and after king c7, f4, white has extra pawn, better position, and it's not necessary to see the rest of the game because position is totally lost for black. Bad bishop, bad pawn structure, down a pawn, and bad pieces position. For those who plays openings that I recommend variations, this game may come very, very handy. Now, let's look at one more game. And this game I find extremely instructive because it's a new way of playing against Gioco Piano. This is not too long ago I made a DVD on the variation that was almost never played in a very well known position, d5, ed, and knight takes d5, where the only move that was known was queen b3, and the black plays knight a5 or knight e7, gives white a tiny bit of advantage with very good chances for black for total equality, and it was still playable. However, with the great help of Ripka, I started working on castling move. Castling and now rook c1. This is the idea that gives white, I may say, significant advantage. The key of whole system is the rook c1 move, which slows down black's development, and it's very serious. For those who is really interested to start playing this system, you should get my DVD on news in Gioco Piano. Rook c1 move is a critical move in this position because it stops knight b6 and knight takes d4, where white ends up with good size advantage. So white has an advantage here. So then black has to find some different way to develop pieces. Well, I remember looking at bishop g4, h3, and rook e1. In some cases threatening actually bishop takes d5, followed by rook c5. So in this position, my opponent, who was a pretty good player, but he was not prepared for rook c1 move, so he made a general prophylactic move. After rook c1, he played, instead of bishop g4, h6. After h6, rook e1 was played, knight c e7, and knight e5. White has significant pressure on black's position, and black has some kind of difficulties to comfortably develop the pieces. So after knight e5, black played c6, knight e4, knight f5 was played, knight c5. Black has everything protected, but it's not clear how should they continue development. After knight c5, f6, trying to relieve the pressure by playing maybe b6 and developing the light square bishop. So bishop takes d5. This is very important move, forcing black to play c takes d. Queen takes d5 is a mistake. It looks very natural, looks okay, but it's bad, because knight g6 attacking the rook on f8, and after rook moves, g4 attacking knight, and knight cannot move because of knight e7 check. So pawn takes d5 is absolutely forced, and now knight g6. White has very serious advantage. So what should black do now? Rook e8 was played, and after rook e8, queen g4. Maybe queen a4, according to Ripka, queen a4 is a better move, but queen g4 is good enough. Queen g4, black played b6, trying to drive the knight back, knight d3, and now knight d6, attacking white's king, queen f4, and bishop f5, attacking two knights. Rook takes e8, queen takes e8, and rook e1. Queen takes g6, queen takes d6. Now knight is going to f4, which is very strong position. White's queen and the rook are very well placed on d6 and e1. Taking knight is not possible because queen takes d5 check, winning a rook. So black is forced to play something like king h7. That's what happened. Queen takes d5, rook c8. Now knight f4, queen g5 and g3. White has an extra pawn with absolutely no compensation. It's understandable black's desire to create some counterplay, rook c2, but that turns out to be a critical mistake. After rook e8, white is threatening mate in 1, and it's now all over. After rook e8 still was played h5 move, trying to go king h6 on queen g8 check, and then queen a8 threatening mate in 1, and after king h6 there is a simple two-move combination, rook check, bishop h7, rook takes h7, king takes h7, followed by queen e4 check, taking rook on c2 and having extra piece and an easy win. Actually, might have been better even queen e4, but rook takes 7 is absolutely sufficient. Next two games I want to show you, I find them particularly instructive, and everybody knows that I highly recommend to play accelerated Draken with a move order e4, c5, knight f3, g6. Well, the reason why not knight c6, because possible bishop b5. Not that it's very dangerous for black, but it's some system I would like to avoid. And at the same time, I try to entice white to play d4, and on cd, queen takes d4. And this is the position that my next two games are based on. First game I want to show you was played against Grandmaster. And you can see how even played by Grandmaster with white, and I played with black, one misstep, and there was more than one misstep, can drive to total destruction. After queen takes d4, knight f6, e5 is the main move, knight c6, queen a4, knight d5, queen e4, and knight b6. Now this position is well analyzed by me, and in modern theory this is known as equally as good as maybe knight c7 or even knight b4. In my opinion, knight b6 is by far the best move, and black has very good game after knight b6. So let's see what happened in the first game. With white was some quite well-known grandmaster. I don't like to mention names. It was played in a blitz game, and that because it may give some wrong impression about player skill. And so this is the position is a lot easier to play for me than for them, because I know every little move, every variation, and every detail of this position, since I worked so much and so hard on it. So after knight b6, bishop f4. This is mistake number one. After d5, black already has an advantage. E takes d, bishop f5. Queen e2, and this is the key move, knight d5. I've analyzed it multiple times. Even my student Eugene Perlstein played in one tournament game, and he won practically under 20 moves. So same thing happened here. Knight d5, bishop g3, and bishop g7. Taking on e7 just increases black's initiative, black's advantage in development. So what happened here after bishop g7, c3, black castled. You see already black is miles ahead in development. Queen on e2 queen made 3 moves to end up probably in a worse position on the board, blocking white's light square bishop. So, and after black castled, white played queen d1. There you want to develop, finally, develop the bishop. After queen d1, queen b6, and it's hard to imagine the game is over in 4 moves. Queen b6, queen b3, b2 pawn is hanging, b3 is not possible, so queen b3 was played. Now pawn takes d6. Black is desperate to finish development. Rook fe8. And how to finish development now? By the way, the knight is absolutely untouchable because white is going to lose the rook and will never be able to castle because bishop is not protected. And this position is already completely hopeless. Queen takes b6, knight takes b6, and there is an attempt, king d2, to play the bishop d3, but there follows bishop h6 check, king d1, and knight a4. White simply resigned here. There is no way of protecting b2 pawn. And pushing b3, it doesn't do it much good because after knight check and then knight d3 check, white is absolutely, totally lost. Even bishop d3 actually the easiest way to win. In this position, I think the main reason white resigned is that they have no moves. Not because they cannot protect position properly, but their position is very, very depressing. And white simply resigned here. A good player will resign here, and bad player will play to the mate. White simply resigned here. Next game I played, I'm going to show you. This was a game played by me against, it's a second game played on ICC against Caruana, Fabiano Caruana, one of the world's leading players. I lost this game, but I lost because I lost on time. Position I got was completely winning, and after opening, I had an advantage with black. So let's go through this game. e4, c5. You will see the opening, familiar tune, d4, queen takes d4, knight f6, e5, knight c6, queen a4, knight d5, queen e4, knight b6, and bishop b5. So the purpose of this move is just to relieve the pressure on white's e5 pawn. So at some point, black will be taking the knight on c6. After bishop b5, bishop g7, white castled, I went d5, ed, and queen takes d6. Bishop f4. Now queen c5, bishop takes c6, queen takes c6, queen takes c6, pawn takes c6. What's about this position? How do we evaluate? White has slightly better pawn structure, but complete evaluation of this position, black has sizable advantage because b2 is hanging, black has 2 strong bishops, Knight will be coming to d5, and black is better here. So what happened here, bishop e5. Of course, we shouldn't exchange bishops, because then white may take advantage of our pawn weaknesses. f6, temporarily blocking our bishop, but maintaining two bishop advantage. e5, bishop c5, now king f7. Maybe I could have played a little better, but whatever I got was still very, very good. So bishop f5, attacking c1, rook d1, knight a4, bishop a3, bishop h6. Black's pieces completely dominating the board. Rook c1 to e1. Well, I didn't feel like taking on c2 because rook is going to come back to c1 and then take on c6. The reason white played rook c1 to e1 just to get out of the pin of a knight. Well, I took there anyway. I reluctantly, but I took rook c1, bishop f5, and now if you rook takes c6, we will go rook c8. If we have an open file supporting by two bishops, white's position may get very critical. So rook c4 was played first, and after rook c4 I went knight b6. Now rook h4. Obviously white really hated its position after rook takes c6 and rook c8, so they try to fish in unclear waters. So after rook h4, bishop g7, rook c1, g5, rook b4, rook hc8, knight e4, bishop f8, knight c5, rook c to b8, rook b3. Here, after knight d5, knight d2, black simply has extra pawn and good size advantage. Knight f4, king f1. Probably I could have won somewhere here immediately, but I went a5 and then g3, rook takes b3, d2 takes b3, knight d3, and now knight takes d3, bishop takes d3, king e1, bishop e4. Well, you see black has two bishops. Well, one bishop can be exchanged, but still after this black has dominating bishop over the knight. Bishop on d5 is very powerful. Extra pawn and more than enough to win the game. However, one thing you don't see, because you can't see, is that I was very short on time, and eventually you need some time here to bring this position home, and I didn't have enough time, and the final position was totally winning for me. However, I lost on time. Another total victory. To me, it was a victory. I felt like I won the game because I play those games on ICC for one purpose only, to test my openings and to come out of the opening in a very favorable position. That's exactly what happened here. Black has big advantage and totally winning position. Another great victory for black in variation with queen takes d4 against accelerated. I want to go over to 3 more games that I think are essential for the opening repertoire I am offering. The first game of this last 3 The game about a system that I recommend to play against c4. Of course, against c4 you can play Nimzo Indian or King's Indian, but this particular system against c4 I recommend, and I played very successfully one system in English opening. So there is my game on ICC, and I repeated a few times before that I'm showing my games because I know all the specifics of the systems I recommend. This is against quite strong player, grandmaster. I am black. Bishop b4. Actually, it's not my system, but I play it a little differently. It's very well-known system. Normal moves here are bishop c5 or even castle. I go d6, bishop g2, castling, bishop a5, d3, h6. Now, h6 move I particularly like. In this position, white may be threatening bishop g5, but in some position, when h6 is not necessary, I still recommend to play, because the idea of h6 move very frequently, because I want to put knight on h7 before I go f5. Also, I may want to put bishop on e6 to prevent knight g5. So h6 is all-purpose, useful move. And in this position, it's probably necessity. So rook b1, white prepares typical play on the queen side. Bishop b6, I don't mind giving up the dark square bishop. b4, knight takes, pawn takes, and knight d4. What we want to do, right now knight h7 wasn't necessary. We got rid of f6 knight, and we definitely plan on pushing the f pawn. Knight d2. White tries to discomfort black's knight on d4. Bishop g4. Well, right now f5 is obviously bad move because of e3. But bishop g4 attacking e2 pawn, and f3, of course, will be met by knight takes f3 and double check. So white's move is practically forced. And now queen d7. Now it's a little difficult for white to kick the knight away from d4, since e3 is not possible. And in my opinion, black already has pretty good position. Knight c4, f5, and there starts this play. a4, f4. Now this move is razor sharp move. Now if white goes a5, they may run into complete disaster after fg, threatening g takes f, and on hg, possibly knight takes e2 check. White never has a chance to take the bishop on b6, and on rook takes e2. There are two moves, maybe even bishop takes f2 check. Black has very strong attack, and they can always take the rook on e2 later. Or maybe even rook takes f2. Anyway, this is extremely dangerous for white. So after f4, they played bishop e4, but now f3. Now taking f3 was threatening, and white did intend to go e3. So the reason why they played bishop e4, that they don't want black to play f3 while bishop is still on g2, and then e3 will not be possible. That's why bishop e4, f3, e3, and bishop h5. This is very, very strong move with a deadly threat of queen h3 and mate on g2, and next several moves are absolutely forced, and black ends up winning material, going to absolutely winning endgame. King h1 is forced, queen h3, rook g1 is forced, and now simple tactical shot, queen g2 check. Obviously, queen has to be taken, and black has an extra rook, but white is gonna get one of minor pieces, so we exchanged queens, and we're gonna have at least an exchange up with very easily won position. After a5, bishop f3 check. We're gonna lose one piece anyway, so knight takes f3, ab, e4, rook a2. Black has superior position with extra exchange. Bishop e3, knight d4, bishop takes, pawn takes, and after rook f1, b5, knight a5, rook d2. Now black has also very dangerous pass pawn. Game is practically over. And after rook b3, I would like to go through this part very quickly because game essentially it lost value because white's position is easily won. And in here, white played e5, and after b3, they're gonna lose the knight because black is threatening rook takes e2, and b pawn is moving, and meanwhile white's pass pawn is going nowhere because black can catch it, so white here resigned. I think this game, the reason I brought this game, because it's very typical. I won very, very many games playing this system. Well, I might have lost some too, of course, but I got very good position, and this position is super difficult to play for white. And at some point, white seems okay, and a few moves later, they are in grave danger. So I recommend to play this system. I have DVD actually, where I analyze system against English opening for black, and that's exactly the one. I don't play anything I wouldn't recommend on my DVDs. So I play those things for two purposes. First of all, to get enough material to work on and then to publish, and also because I believe in this. I believe these are good systems. So this is very, very interesting game. Next two games are Sicilian for white, and one game was like when we tried to play Grand Prix, and black, as you know, against Grand Prix, that system that I recommend has multiple varieties of continuations, and we're going to cover one of them right now. That's going to be our first game, also on the internet against pretty strong player. Well, the reason why I'm bringing you internet games, because I want to show you my games, because most of the games and most typical games that outline all the ideas I recommend are in my games, and I feel more comfortable analyzing them. And since I don't play in tournaments lately, the only thing I can bring to your attention is my games from internet. So let's go on. This game was played against Greek Grandmaster. E4, C5, Knight C3, D6, F4, G6, Knight F3, Bishop G7, Bishop B5 check, Bishop D7, and Bishop C4. This seems little awkward. Why would we play bishop b5 check if we intend to go bishop c4? Well, there is a reason behind it. Because in some positions, bishop stands better, black's bishop, on c8 than on d7. I will show you a couple of points. Actually, I described all these ideas and thoughts on DVD that related to this opening. The reason why, and there is no advantage in almost in any variation for black to have bishop on d7 rather than on c8. And here is why. Suppose black goes here, knight c6. We're going to castle, and after knight f6, we're going to go d3. And it's going to be a normal position where we play this system. We go queen h4. But why bishop is not as good on d7 as on c8? That's because if black plays in this position e6, just the way it happened in the game. Actually, my opponent did play e6. That's why I think analyzing this game is very instructive. And then you will understand why we give check on b5. d4, c takes d, knight takes d4, and now black must go a6. You see, if knight e7, knight b5 will immediately create serious problem because d6 pawn is going to be hard to defend. That's why I don't think bishop on d7 stands as well as it would on c8. By the way, there is another thing. Black cannot play bishop g4 because of bishop takes f7, followed by knight g5 check, and queen takes g4 simply gives white easily won position. So now let's go back to the game. e6, d4, black took, white took, and a6 to prevent knight b5. Now bishop e3, and you see now pawn on d6 after queen d2 and castling long. Pawn on d6 is going to be permanent weakness. Now black realized already that they have serious problem. So knight f6 was played, and now I could have gone queen d2, but I thought e5 was pretty good move. D takes c, f takes c, and now knight d5 is forced because only other option, knight h5 is not an option because of g4, and on queen h4 check bishop f2, otherwise knight has no square to retreat. So that's why knight d5 was played. Bishop takes d5, pawn takes d5, and queen f3. White has tremendous advantage. White is going to castle queenside, d5 pawn is weak, and bishop on d7, as I already mentioned, is not standing well. Black is in trouble here. After queen f3, knight c6, and after knight c6, we have an option to take on c6 and go castle long, maybe even play castle short, or simply castling long. That's what happened. And after knight takes e5, queen takes d5. Black is in a very, very bad position. Well, what can be done here? Bishop g4 was played. Black is attacking white's king. not attacking but trying to exchange, and at the same time attacking rook. It's understandable that black is anxious to exchange queens. If black has castled, after knight f3, they have some serious problems they have to solve. On knight takes f3, probably queen takes d7. White has big advantage. So bishop g4 was natural move. And here, actually, I like what I did. I played queen takes b7. I don't want to exchange queens. Queen takes b7 is very good tactical idea. And you will see when they say, don't keep your king in the center, you have to castle quick. Those are not just words. Let me show you on the board why it's so important to obey this rule. Queen takes b7, and now white played bishop takes d1. Well, if they don't play bishop takes d1, they cannot castle now because they're going to be pawn down. Also, there is all kinds of moves like knight c6. They create a lot of problems for black. So after queen takes b7 and bishop takes d1, of course white can play rook takes d1 and have a compensation, but then black is going to go queen c8. But the idea of the sacrifice was the key knight e6 move. And after knight e6 move, black lost in very few moves. What happened in the game that black played queen c8. Well, the best response was to take the knight, according to analysis with Ripken, after queen takes g7, knight f7. But, you know, if white simply plays rook takes d1, they have very powerful position. But move like rook f1 simply wins the game after rook takes f7, queen takes rook. Now, in order not to lose the second rook, black has to go queen f8, and this position, needless to say, is totally resignable for black. But black played queen c8, and that is also terrible. Knight takes g7, king f8, and now we simply play queen d5. What's for black to do? Now, they have knight hanging, bishop hanging, king is not castled. On taking the knight, queen takes e5 wins the second piece on d1, because on f6 there is queen e7 check, and black is totally lost. So what happened is, after queen d5, queen c7 was played. And here I missed, because it's a blitz game, I missed very simple winning move, bishop h6. Now the bishop is hanging, I protect the knight, and knight e6 check is threatening winning the queen, and the rook on a8 is hanging. All together it practically forces black to resign immediately. So what happened? Well, on a move like rook d8, double check, and I think white wins most of black's pieces. I played knight e6 check first, just to open black's king position. Queen takes a8, king g7, and now bishop h6 check, king takes h6, queen takes h8. White has big material advantage, exchange and a pawn, rook and a pawn for bishop, and absolutely devastatingly attack. And black could have resigned right now, but there's few more moves were played. Bishop g4, queen f8, king g5, rook f1, threatening queen f4, bishop f5, knight e4 check, bishop takes e4. It's just simply exchanging combination, king h5, queen takes e4, knight g4, h3, and black resigned. They should have done it a few moves ago. A while ago, I published DVD recommending very powerful system, in my opinion, powerful system against Sicilian Najdorf. This game is with Sicilian Najdorf. I do play for white. c5, knight c3 most of the time, but once in a while I also play regular Sicilian, and especially if I know my opponent is going to play Najdorf. Knight c3, a6. And I made a DVD in detail, analyzed new ideas with h3 move. This move was played very long time ago, first time against Najdorf. Fischer won nice game. Well, he didn't have quite position that he intended to, but he could have beaten Najdorf even if he played a3 in this position, or maybe even h4. h3 nevertheless had interesting ideas, was totally undeveloped, not analyzed at that point. And since then, I put quite a bit of time analyzing it. There were also other players that kept playing this system, and this is on the internet. I play game against very strong player, h3, e6, g4, d5. This is part of a theory. E takes d, knight takes d5. Actually, I wouldn't recommend anyone to play this system for black. Knight d2, knight takes c3. This has been played already. Queen takes, king takes, knight takes c3, knight c6, bishop e3. White has clear advantage. Well, they're going to castle, they're going to put bishop on g2, and if you compare every minor piece of white against every piece of blacks, you see that white has superiority almost on all pieces. So right now, after bishop e3, in my opinion, black has difficult position. Castling, king e7, and here we try to stop bishop takes c3. We go knight e4. f5 was played. I think it's hyperactive and super dangerous. I think it's a bad move. Just because the queens are off the board, this game cannot be, this position cannot be considered as an endgame position. It's very far from endgame. And as a proof to this statement, you will see that black gets mated in very few moves. I think this is, well, I understand black didn't like position. They see they get totally squeezed and they try to dislocate knight from e4 to be able to come back with bishop on d6. But after f5, knight g3, now black is trying to stop bishop g5 check. Actually, the idea what white wants to do is, for example, if black tries to develop bishop g5 check and on king e8 take and go bishop c4, it's absolutely devastating. So black plays here h6 move, but then knight h5, we're attacking g7 pawn. King f7, also trying to bring the bishop back to e7, but after king f7 there is absolutely forced win for white. G takes f, e takes f, bishop c4, and it's, you see how this is good example that if queens are off the board, do not consider position as an endgame. And end it real quick. On king g6, very important move, rook d to g1 check. Not h to g1, but d to g1. You need the rook on h1. Rook d to g1. It's very simple combination and very easy to calculate. Every move is forced. Bishop e2 check, king h4, and now mate with the rook on h1 by playing rook g4 check. Pawn takes, and hg is a checkmate. Well, not much difference if black played king h5, then white has different mate. There is a double check. As you can see, on double check, there's only move king h4 and rook h5 mate. So there is no difference. That's the swift punishment for playing bad system. And it's not a good idea to play this d5 because this has been played several times and black has never equalized position in this variation. This will conclude our game section of the Centennial issue, and now I want to offer you some interesting analysis on the openings that I recommend. Well, you know, I continuously update or upgrade whatever analysis we had. We're going to do this, and plus I'm going to show you a couple of super interesting and flashy games and end games that highly unusual, highly tactical, and you may say even bizarre, but this is for fun. Some of you may even think they are instructive. So the tactics in endgames, very, very interesting, and I'm showing it to you first time. So let's get to it. So I want to show you the game that was played 80 years ago. Why am I showing you this game? Is it instructive? I don't think so. Is it on the openings that we play? No. Not that we play, that I recommend to play. No. But why am I showing you this game? I'm showing you this game because it's a very original way to conduct the attack on the opponent's king. Very unusual tactics and a very effective conclusion, which I think is very interesting and aesthetically is a very, very nice game. And since this Centennial issue is a freelance, so I'm showing you something that may be either very instructive or it's very interesting. So this is one of those games that played in 2002 between a very young and talented player then, Jan Smits, who is now quite strong grandmasters from Holland, and his opponent Jan Verl, also from Holland. So game started Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, cd, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6, and f3. This move becomes, after that game, about that area, about last 7-8 years, became increasingly popular. What white wants to do is simply play bishop e3, queen d2, castle, and perform standard attack on the king side. But in this game, I want to concentrate mostly on the final stage of the game that shows why I picked this particular game. So After knight c6, f3, e6 was played, bishop e3, bishop e7, queen d2, a6, g4, there comes standard attack, queen c7, white castled, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and black castles, g5, knight d7, h4, knight e5, f4, knight c6. Black has made too many moves with the knight that end up on c6, so that determines that white is way ahead in performing attack on opponent's king. b5 and h5, rook d8, g6. It's a typical way to perform attack because g6 move as opposed to h6 move forces opening of the files. And after g6, bishop f6 was played, bishop d3, rook b8. Well, black is clearly on defensive and white has tremendous attacking chances. e5, very good move, and after de, bringing another piece into the game, knight e4. Now white is going to open the files on king's side, and plus they have knight into the game, bishop on d3 attacking, and all heavy pieces such as rooks and a queen will get lined up on open files. Black is in very bad position. Bishop e7, g takes f, and black had to play king takes f7 because after the move king h8 that they played, white develops deadly attack. After king takes f7, white still has very, very strong attack and probably winning position. But let's see what happened after king h8. After king h8, queen g2. Obviously, that's the stage where I said that white is going to come with all pieces, all heavy pieces on the open files. Queen g2, bishop b7, and here, super original move, queen g6. Of course, the queen is immune because black cannot take it because it's going to be a checkmate. And threat is knight f6, attacking h7 pawn several ways, including bishop on d3. Black is totally lost here after queen g6, and that's what I like. That's not the kind of a typical Sicilian attack when you make move like queen g6. And here, a few more moves left into the game. Knight b4 was played. Now rook d1 to g1, attacking the g7 square. And after bishop f8, deadly knight f6, and the mate is inevitable. Knight takes d3, simply king b1, and now you see the mate is on h7, taking the knight is leading to another mate, and the black took the queen, and this is the mate as well. Bishop takes h1, rook takes h1. Highly attractive game, and I have to mention that I'm sure white could have won several different ways. But this is the type of attack is not that you see very often. And I think this game is quite quite interesting. Now, as you know, I continuously work on the openings that I recommend. And although I make DVD and I do explain everything about that variation that I recommend, I still continue working because nature of the openings are that they are constantly getting updated, and there is no variation almost, well, reasonable variation with reasonable play on both sides, that ever has complete conclusion, because all the modern openings and variations, they get updated from time to time. And same is here. So I did some research in the openings that we play, and it didn't change my evaluation and my opinion about opening, just explore some new possibilities for both sides. And that's what I want to present to you. Well, let's start with our Scotch Gambit position. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6. As you know, we already had few DVDs made on that. D4, ED, Bishop C4, Knight F6, E5, D5, Bishop B5. This is probably most popular, the way to play for black in this variation. Knight takes D4, Bishop D7, Bishop takes C6, B takes C, castling, and, well, as you know, here are moves like C5, Bishop C5, and Bishop E7. So I have few new ideas and new positions for you, and this is with Bishop E7. We go F3, Knight C5, F4, and now Knight E4, and actually always previously was known that white should go F5, which I like a lot less than the Knight C3 move. I think F5, but first of all, I have certain beliefs in the way attack should be conducted, and one of my biggest beliefs is that don't start attack without having number of your pieces, or maybe all your pieces developed properly. And this is why I don't want to play F5. And let me explain why. Unless F5 wins the game, I much rather play Knight C3. And why Knight C3? Black's Knight on E4 is very active. White's Knight on B1 is totally undeveloped and has to be developed. So is Bishop on C1. But I am worried more about Knight on B1 than on Bishop on C1. First of all, I want to exchange strong piece of Black's on E4. And I don't want to go Knight D2 because I already explained on my original DVD that Knight on C3, if it's exchanged, this is very good pawn structure for white, double pawns on C file, because that will restrict significantly Black's central pawn movement. So, and I want to exchange strong knight on E4, which is understandable, and to prove my point, let's try F5. On F5, Black should play Bishop C5, and if we go Knight C3 now, then Queen E7, and we're going to have very hard time to prove, to justify the weaknesses Right now, e5 and f5 pawn they are not attacking pieces. They are weaknesses. That's why we want to exchange the knight first. Well, now imagine if instead of f5, black played knight c3, white played knight c3, and we exchanged the knights. Now f5 is very good because queen e7 doesn't really attack the pawn on e5 due to rook e1. And knight c3 is clearly the move to play. Well, knight takes c3. Now let's see if black plays c5. After c5, black's position becomes very, very dangerous. Knight takes e4. Now if you take on e4, I can go knight e2 or even knight b3 with a terrible pawn structure for black. And if they take on d4 with the idea to go c5, then after knight g3, bishop c5 and f5, black's position is very, very difficult. So that's why black shouldn't play c5. If they play knight takes c3, bc, and c5 now. Of course, if black castles, we will go f5. Okay, now black plays c5. We go knight b3. We don't play knight e2 because black may play bishop b5, and we don't want that pin. So we go knight b3, and after knight b3, now d5 pawn is hanging, c4, bishop c6 is not a good idea because after bishop e3, c pawn is hanging, and if black plays c4, this is just after knight c5 or maybe even knight d4, white has huge advantage. So c4, knight d4, and now c5. Now it's okay to play knight e2 because bishop b5 is not pinning our knight on e2. Now we went knight e2, bishop c6, f5. I looked at this position and I strongly believe white has a big advantage. And after bishop c6, what we should do, go f6. Well, we just went f5. Black can go d4. We are intending f6. Now, taking the pawn on d4, well, maybe even queen d5 first, or cd, and it opens black's bishops, and that's not what we want. We have to keep an accent on attacking black's king position. f6, very strong move. G takes f, e takes f. I worked this position out completely and got to the conclusion that white has nearly winning attack. Bishop takes f6, knight g3. Now the threat is queen f3, attacking bishop on f6, and all white's pieces, bishop will go, light square bishop will go to h6, e-file is open, and black has no place to castle. All this combined makes black's position super difficult. Rook g8. Now, those are the moves I make for black are absolutely the best move. So I'm trying to make best moves with the help of Ripka, and with the best moves, black gets very, bad position. Now, rook g8. If black makes some other moves than rook g8, well, I'm sure you're gonna, with the help of any program, you can find easy win for white with the help of any program, maybe even by yourself. After rook g8, we go queen h5, rook g6, and rook e1 check. King f8 must be played. Now queen takes c5 check, bishop e7. Now protecting bishop on c6, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, c takes d. White has an extra pawn in this position, and after rook d8, black has very active pieces, but on rook d8, even better way, rook b1, now rook takes d4. And actually, now knight f5. Now this move wins the game, because after rook g2, rook takes g2, it does look very dangerous for white. But after king f1, it totally lost for black, because there are no moves. Rook is hanging, bishop is hanging. Rook d7 will lead to a clear win for white after at least this, and bishop a3. This will win, and white has an extra piece. And black cannot deliver final blow here. Well, rook g4, for example, I think white can simply play rook b8 check, forcing bishop e8, and play rook takes e7. It's needless to say that it's all over. Even better is bishop h6 check. So this position, well, actually we can stop analysis in this position. Well, it's simply an extra pawn, and in the end game we cannot look for some sufficient compensation here for black. This is interesting observation, and main point here that once we get this position and we play f5, very difficult for black to stop attack. Now on castling, we could go knight g3. f6 is inevitable unless black plays f6, but then we go e6, and attack is as strong as ever. Queen g4, knight h5, bishop h6, very powerful pawn on e6. White is absolutely and unconditionally winning here. And if black in this position tries d4, this pawn sacrifice is completely new. I just came to this conclusion lately, and after knight g3, rook g8, queen h5, black does not have satisfactory continuations here. Well, on something like bishop e7, bishop g5 is very strong, and king has to go to f8, and this simply transforms position from super sharp to the quiet endgame position with an extra pawn for white. So on rook d8, the important move is rook b1. That really devastates. And now white is going to go c3, and they have very strong advantage. Now, I want to show you some details about one of the most critical positions of our Grand Prix that I had a relatively hard time determining accurate play for white. Well, let me tell you what position I'm talking about. E4, C5, knight C3, knight C6, F4, G6, knight F3, bishop G7, bishop B5, knight D4, castling, knight takes B5, knight takes B5, D5. This is very well known theoretical position. ED, A6, knight C3, knight F6, D4 and C4. For those of you who follows the analysis of this opening and developments in this opening, they know that C4, one of the main moves here. And after queen E2, knight takes D5. Well, I am reluctant to take the pawn on C4 after bishop E6. In my opinion, black has sufficient company. We don't want to get into details of it. Knight E5 and bishop E6. I already published analysis on B5 where we play A4 and get superior position. Now, bishop E6 move is kind of improvement for black, and we're going to go through this improvement. On B5, A4, to show you briefly what may happen, and if black goes bishop B7, we take on B5, move B4 will be followed by knight E4. Now C4 is weak and white has a square on C5 for the knight. So after bishop B7, we take the pawn. Now, in order not to lose the pawn, black has to take the knight on C3 first. And I think white has much better position after bishop A3. They have very well placed pieces. Now, in order to make improvement, black goes bishop E6, and that's what I analyzed. When I analyze these positions, I try to see improvement for my opponent's side, because when it happens, we definitely want to be ready. And bishop E6 is the improvement. So now let's see, knight E4, white castles, then we go C3. Now I'm thinking about maybe taking the pawn on C4, which we couldn't do on a previous move because we're going to lose the pawn on D4. So when we go C3, black expected to play B5, and after knight C5, queen D6. Black's position is very solid. We have knights on E5 and C5, but we have still yet to organize plan that we can use those powerful pieces. Bishop D2, bishop F5, those are the best moves for black. Rook A, E1. So before making any plan, we have to bring all our pieces in the best position. Now F6. Knight F3. Black plays rook A to E. Let's look at this position. First of all, before rook A to E8, I have to point that move knight takes F4 favors white, because after knight E5, this is the move, not to take on A7. That gives black very good position. They have two bishops versus two knights. But knight E5 move, queen H6, those are all new analysis. And now knight C6. Now we want to take on E7 with a knight. Or these two knights, they completely restrict black's rooks. So black has to act very accurately. And even then, after E6, knight E7 check, king h8, and super interesting, d5 gives white a very big advantage. You see, I didn't like taking pawn on e7 because I said black has two bishops versus two knights, position quiet. Now black has two bishops versus two knights. They have an extra pawn, but they are almost lost. Position is absolutely terrible for black. Now, what should black do? If they go e5, then we're going to go knight takes f5 and rook takes f5, having positionally absolutely crushed position, and knight goes. This is out of question. If black takes on d5, then we have knight takes f5, gf, and now rook takes f5 with absolutely the same result. Black has very pitiful position. Every piece is passive and very difficult to find any play for any life for black. So after d5, this is very interesting and unusual position. Black is in very, very bad shape. So knight takes f4 is a bad move. Well, I would say that majority of the players with black would take knight on f4 because it's very difficult to foresee the final position. Well, if they play rook e8, which is the best move, we go knight h4. And now, if black goes bishop c8, we go knight e6, having much better position. Oh, suppose black plays e5. That's where white gets different kind of advantage. Knight takes f5, pawn takes f5, and queen h5. You see the terrible bishop on g7? After queen h5 and knight c7, that's the best move. Attacking d4, bishop e3, and if ed, bishop takes d4, white has tremendous advantage. And it's difficult to find here any better move for black. Well, I looked at this position with Ripka, and although black has very active position, Ripka agrees that it's big advantage for white. I think it's also obvious d4 pawn cannot be taken because rook is not defended. White simply wins a rook, and e4 will lead to material loss, and after e3 simply maybe bishop c1, and pawn is going to be very weak. For later, white can attack this e3 pawn with all their pieces, rook f3, queen h3, and with a dead bishop on g7, terrible position for black. So white has an advantage, and again, very interesting play, and specifically the idea of leaving the pawn on pre, and this variation I find super interesting. Knight c6, and after e6 move, check, followed by d5. It's very difficult to, with just taking one quick look, to determine that this position is nearly lost for black. Well, those are my brief observation of the news in one of the popular variations of Grand Prix. Now, few super original end games that I promised to show you, and this is the first one of them. It's a black's move, and this position is obvious draw. If black simply plays rook f1 check and rook e1 check, and then eventually they attack the h pawn, and if white protects, they go all over again. This is a simple draw. And if white tries in this position to go g6, this is not going to be, they are not going to be successful, because king up on rook h8, king g5, and you see there is no way white can make any progress, and this is going to be obvious draw. However, in this position, actually it happened in a game of two very strong players. Black made a move that is very obvious and losing. Move was played was rook takes h5. Why I found this game out of ordinary, it does not have any elements of the endgame strategy. Well, white cannot go g6 check because pawn is pinned. White has no threat, equal pawns, but black is totally lost. No threat for white, because white makes just simple waiting move. Any rook on any square on 8 rank, and black has to play. Now there are two different moves. Well, actually I consider any move with black rook on h file as one move, because it doesn't really make difference. They go to h3, h2, or h1. And the second move is g6. And they are both totally losing. Move with the rook is out of question because it leads to immediate mate. So black is absolutely forced to play g6, not to get mated. And now king f6. This is a classical position of Zugzwang in a rook ending with one pawn on the board. This is highly unusual because rooks have so many different moves, and if black could just not move at all, they are okay. But they have to move. Rook cannot move, so g6 must be played. And then we get to the very well-known theoretical position where white has an easy win. Threatening mate. Rook f1 is obviously not acceptable because white wins easily. So king has to go to f8. And now after the check, I hope you all know the bridge. This is a very famous pattern, how the bridge wins in the end game. Well, to show you quickly what white can do here, how white wins, is this. We go king g8, and if rook stands on g file, then we go king h7, and king f6 doesn't do anything normally, and we go g7, and when black starts checking, we eventually go to g8, and now black waits, and that's where we construct the bridge. Rook check and rook e4. This is famous bridge position. Theoretical that any more or less qualified player will know this. And now king f7, that's the bridge. Rook f1 check, king g6, check, king f6, and now check is not good because king g5 and rook g4. This is the bridge, and this is theoretically one position. I find this endgame very, very interesting. And let's see now one more position that is against all normal principles of chess. This is highly original, and it looks like should be an easy win for white, but look at the dramatic escape for black. So there is the position. White's move. This position is very difficult to win. However, white has some winning chances. What they had to do is to bring the king forward, and that's not the position we want to analyze. What we want to analyze is next move by white. This game was played on a very high level, and white, knowing that it's problematic to win this endgame in a normal way, they made the move d6. Move d6 may be made by very strong player or by very weak player. And here is why. The points I want to make about it, here is the thinking of a strong player. King cannot get in front of that pawn because white makes queen, and they get to the position they were looking for, to the pawn ending, which we're going to discuss. After d6, king c6, king e3 first, but it doesn't change the evaluation of this position. For d7, and after rook d8, king e4, and black has to take the pawn. Well, if black doesn't take the pawn, white is going to go king e5, king e6, so they are forced to take the pawn either now or the next move. So, and even in this position, if white's king was on c3, in this position, after white plays d7, rook d8. Actually, whole question is not about the rook ending. It's not about rook. The whole question is position with pawn ending. So what we have to assess is what is this pawn ending. Based on white's calculation, it's an easy win. And I have to tell you this, that white is going to win the c5 pawn. Black cannot protect c5 pawn. Because on king c6, white is going to play king e6 and king e5 until black runs out of moves and move the king. Then they go king d5, and black eventually is going to end up in a Zugzwang, even if they play here, king d5, and they lose the c5 pawn, and they lose the game. However, there is one highly unusual trick by black that helps them to save the game. To save the game, what black has to do, they can go king c7 if they want to. Well, actually, white goes king e6, king c7. This is draw. It doesn't matter in which order you play, as long as you follow the pattern we're going to look, it's a draw. The key move is a6. Pawn has to stand on a6. And after king d5, king a5 move brings to a complete deadlock. So white can never take the pawn due to a stalemate, and going king c7 is also leads to stalemate, and if king d6, black will go king b6 and king a5 until they get stalemated. So there is no way for white to make any progress. They can come to this pawn as close as this, but they will never be able to take the pawn. I think this is, well, there are no principles. I'm showing you the endgame positions that they do not apply to any principles. You cannot apply any principles to that. They are just out of ordinary and one-of-a-kind ideas that can be applied only to the very, very specific case. So this is another very interesting endgame, and that will conclude our Centennial issue. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something that you had fun with, and I hope you had something that came very handy and instructive to you. So in any way, we're going to continue working hardly on improving our openings that I recommend, and on showing you some typical games on our openings, some simple games, and some fascinating combinations and positions. And I hope you stay with us and you enjoy. Thank you very much. This was Roman Gingiashvili.